Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Kennedy, and you are listening to Menopod.
Menopod. Welcome.
With Sue Merlino as well, sitting in the co-captain seat.
Is that, yeah, we switched actually. You were over here for a while and then you went over there.
No, and now I'm the first stew and then you're the second stew. Okay. We're equal. We're equal.
I think we're on autopilot, to be honest with you.
So some changes for the Menopod. We are really trying to do some serious podcasting because people, quite frankly, are really wanting to listen to us everywhere. And it's hard to listen to us, and watch us at the same time while you're driving. So,
right. We don't recommend doing that.
Yeah, it's not, I've tried it. It's not a good thing. Anyway, so you're going to hear our beautiful voices. And yes, you will see those fantastic sketches like the one we did with Kim and Josh and, our cast of, and Claire and Rochelle, our cast of actors that we use all the time. But for the most part, you're going to be hearing us over the airwaves. And we're going to be talking about the topics that you like, going through this crazy thing that we call peri-meno and post-menopause.
Good times.
Wasn't that fun? That sounded very violent. Pause. Didn't it?
The Boston pause. We got a pause.
There's no pause
like a
about
big
it.
pause button somewhere on my body.
Yes.
Stop all this nonsense because I'm tired of it, quite frankly.
And we have a guest, right?
So yeah,
let's talk to our guest.
So today we're very happy to have Kimberly Napier, and I have a little bio here. She's a life and business coach. She helps women create a life and business that they love, right? Instead of just going through the motions, and it's crazy how we get caught up in things in the day-to-day, and why not do something that you love to do that gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yep, exactly.
So Kimberly's helped hundreds of women live empowered on their terms through her proprietary Dare Change process. So we're going to hear a little bit about that. She runs an international coaching practice and mastermind for women entrepreneurs. She is the author of the new book, which I just read, Know What You Want Next.
It's great.
Break free of the, what does Sue say every single day? I don't know. Try. And love your life again. She lives with her husband, 4 teenagers, 2 Goldens outside of Boston, Mass. Let's welcome our guest, Kim. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
So my first question to you before we get into the nitty gritty, you live in a house with 4 teenagers. My daughter just turned 13 and I don't even know what to do. Actually, I'm not.
Yeah. That'd be another show.
So in reading the book, the first thing other than the tagline, and seriously, like every day I take a video of myself with my affirmations, either crying, laughing, happy. It's a manic video, but every day for like a year, I've been taking a video of myself.
Where does this video go?
It's right now. It's on my phone, which I probably need to get rid of.
You know what? We should put it on the pod.
Oh no.
Okay.
It's like a for myself.
All right, I get it.
But I say in it a lot, like way too much. I don't know. And after reading your book, and I do know, right? It's in there.
Yes, you do know.
Yeah. And how'd you come up with that tag? Is it just something that you hear all the time?
Women say it all the time. I don't know. And one of the things, as you know, I talk about in the book is how to manifest what you want. And saying I don't know is the biggest block to manifesting. You have to have some clarity to put a stake in the ground for what you do want. So I always tell my clients right away, you have to lose that at the door. I don't know is no longer something you can say. Instead, take a pause and check in with yourself. Let yourself just be with the discomfort of processing, because what happens is we do know what we want, but all of the fears and doubts and limiting beliefs keep us stuck because we don't know how it will happen. And so it's not that you don't know what you want, but I think especially as women, we get stuck in this overthinking trap of, well, wait, how's that going to happen? And then how am I going to do this? And what if I get that? And then I don't want that. And if I do this, what are they going to think? And we just go down this trail of self-doubt and sabotage that we stay stuck in, I don't know, because I just don't know how it's going to happen.
Well, I think we're doing a big disservice to ourselves, because I know for moms anyway, and I know we have a lot of fans that aren't moms, but from a very young age, even though, you know, women, we've really had to stand up for ourselves, I would say, in the last 3 years. Anyway, I think we do know. I think what happens to women, because a lot of us are people pleasers, myself included, is we do know, but we're afraid if we tell people we know, it's the wrong choice, and then we've made a mistake.
Yeah.
Or we're going to make somebody unhappy. And that, for me, is something where at this point in my life, I have to say, you know what, I don't care anymore. You know, I instinctively know, and if you know what, it doesn't turn out okay, we're still okay. You know?
Yes, I do.
You agree with that, life coach?
I do know, you're right. And, you know, for so long we try to please everybody. And I think this is why we don't know, is because for so long we've been taking care of everyone as moms and taking care of everything and trying to keep the peace and make sure everybody's happy. And then slowly we become disconnected from ourselves. And so we actually are left often not knowing what we want anymore. And if we do have an idea of what we want, how is it going to affect everybody? And we get caught in that trap too of, you know, am I going to disappoint somebody? Am I going to let them down? And, you know, how's that going to play out? And how's that ultimately going to affect me? And so we stay small and we stay kind of stuck in our box.
So it's so easy just to say, all right, never mind. I'm not going to bother trying to chew on that. So
exactly. Yes.
So what is the first step when you try to figure out what the first step is? Like,
well, it's funny because when you just said that, what came to my mind and what I talk about in the book is, if you do get on the path to deciding I'm going to know, you have to own it. You have to become responsible. So you can't just throw your hands up anymore and be like, I don't know, forget it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to deal with it. The first step is really becoming responsible for your path and owning it. And that takes a lot of courage to say, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to sit down and go for it.
But do you find that women, I feel this way anyway, I this is like if I do date night with my husband, I'll say, where do you want to eat? I don't know. Where do you want to eat? And then I say, I don't know. And then we don't know. And then we end up, you know, going somewhere we both don't like. Would you say the people that you work with were conditioned with this sort of, I don't know, just that comes out of our head just because?
Well, it becomes a pattern, right? It becomes it's almost like we're on autopilot and we're not being mindful or conscious. We're just sort of going through the motions and just letting things happen to us instead of sitting with, and that's why it's a little confronting to actually ask yourself, what do I want? You know, what do I really want? And to sit and think about that. Of course, choosing where you go for dinner is not life or death, but if you are so often in the pattern of, you know, what's that?
You don't know these people. It's very
no, it's true.
But you know,
even
that's the thing too.
Even at a small level, like, we have to stop saying it, because even though it is only dinner, take command, take ownership, take responsibility. And I think that's a big part and a big problem of our society right now is it's a blame game. I mean, from the top down, and no one's owning anything. No one's taking responsibility. They'd rather just push it off on somebody else. Even if it isn't yours and you see something, take responsibility and fix it.
Yeah.
That's how
and when you start doing that in even small areas of your life, you will see huge shifts. And I talk a lot about that in the book because, so for me, when I got on this path, because I lost my husband to suicide, and it was very easy for me to do the blame game and to feel like a victim. And, you know, that's an extreme case, obviously. But what I realized was I had to take ownership. And when I started to look at my life and realize that there were so many ways even before that I was really being a victim, that I wasn't taking responsibility. I was waiting for things to happen for me, you know, whether it was at work or at home, or I was saying yes to stuff I really didn't want to. And having this huge shift in my life made me realize what mattered, and it gave me courage to say no to things I didn't want to anymore and really ask myself, what do I want now? And so that was a silver lining in everything, that it gave me permission almost to say, enough's enough. I'm going to do things the way I want now, and I'm not going to settle, and I'm not going to play the people-pleasing game, because I quite honestly don't have space for that anymore. And so that really shifted things for me. And in doing that, I started to notice those little ways that what I say, give away our power, even when we, say I don't know, or say yes to something, and even though we don't want to, like, even if we say, yeah, I'll eat there, sure, I'll eat there, I really don't want to, but okay, like we're not giving ourselves that opportunity to have what we want, right? And as moms, we do it over and over and over and over again, till then we sometimes explode and we're like, oh my God, and then we have to, make a shift.
So I think with our group, Midlife Mood Swing, the women, when they hit perimenopause, postmenopause, their body's changing. So they don't have a choice. They need to make a different change, like a change for themselves, because, or they're going to feel like crap, right? I mean, at least I had to do that. So I think it's almost like this universal thing where you have to change something.
It's a good time in your life.
It's a good time in your life. But some of us are going kicking and screaming. So how do you deal with a client that you personally see as the life coach, their sort of blocks? Like, how do you sort of navigate around those blocks so they can have choices?
Well, I think really the first thing is showing them that they do have a choice, that you get to decide, do you want to stay this way or do you want to be a different way? And one of the most sobering facts for me when I started doing this work was learning that the majority of our happiness, believe it or not, is really driven by our choices, and only 10% is due to our circumstances. And that kind of blew me away.
Right.
And that, nobody's going to do the work for you. So there's no prince coming to save you. So you've got to decide, do I want to stay in this place, or do I want to pivot out of it? Do I want to choose something better for me? And that's really up to you. That's where the freedom is. Once you decide to make that shift, everything will shift, but you have to make that choice that you're going to do it. And that's the hardest step, is to say, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to choose something different, because it's much easier to stay in the mode of, whether you call it a pity party or complaining or negativity, it's much easier to stay there. It's harder to own the path forward, to say, I'm going to do something different.
But I think it's hard for people to own and do something different if they feel they're truly a victim of their circumstances. And that can be difficult.
Yeah, so they have to learn how to get over that. So do you give people steps on how to break down that barrier and get over being the victim? Do you call them out on that? Or are those people not even approaching you for help?
Those people usually aren't ready. So I'd say that is really the first step, is that you're going to own it. That you're going to say, I'm going to own this 100% and I'm going to do something about it. And then I help them with the ways to get out of that negativity and that victim mode. And really the biggest shift that you can do for yourself is to shift your mindset and say, okay, so I've been focusing on the things that aren't working, but right now I'm going to shift. I'm actually going to look at the things that are working. And the more that you make that your focus, and I talk about this in the book, but one of the ways I kind of laugh about it, but it's really true. If you guys ever watched Seinfeld, I'm sure you did. I think we're all around the same age here. We all watched Seinfeld, and that was kind of the show. George Costanza, he had this one day where he said, I'm going to do everything the opposite day. And everything went his way when he did that. He got the job at the Yankees. He got the girl. Everything fell into place. And so I laugh and I joke about it, but it's really true. If you're stuck in a victim mode, you've got to force yourself to get out of it by doing the opposite. And that's really what I did. I was in a really negative place and certainly a victim, but I said, I don't want to stay here. I don't want to be the poor thing. I'm going to just dare myself to do something a little different today. And I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and act as if things are going my way. And I started doing things in an opposite way, and things started to shift for me. And it's that simple, but of course there's a lot of science behind, and also just manifesting in terms of when you start doing things that are aligned with a more positive way of being, you see things shift. You attract things into your life that are different. So that's what keeps you going on the path. But the first step is to shift your mindset to what is going well, what's working in my life, what am I grateful for, instead of putting your attention on the stuff that's not working. And the more you do that, you pull yourself out of the muck.
And I know the more you do that, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
Because when you first start doing that, you keep reminding yourself, like, oh, let's try it again in a positive way. You know, let's look at it this way. When you're not growing up with that model, I can't speak for others or you, but it's like I wasn't really surrounded by that, you know, like upbeat.
Oh yeah, you could do. Yeah, no, I wasn't either.
Yeah, so to create that and change that little, you know,
no, not a.
But here's what's interesting, and this
it's the hardest thing.
Yeah, and I think for people that are doing a job change, you know, hello. You know, I always knew what I wanted to do since the age of 5, right? And my mother was a professional musician, gave me that path because I found I could do money with my art, right? Whereas my father was an insurance broker who really wanted to be a lawyer, so he never really lived his truth. You know, and so, and I think that affected him negatively in a lot of ways. So I think for those that are looking to do a job change, you know, and it's such a recurring thing. For people in our age range, I've been talking to a lot of men and women that they are tired of working for somebody else. That they want to be their own boss, that they are tired of as they say, working for the man, and that they need to make a change. I think for people, the steps that it takes for them to make that change frighten people. And so how do you make it easier for them that it's not this big overwhelming change? How do you do step by step with people?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. And, you know, I left the corporate world as well. And it was kind of, for me, it was a leap of faith. But in working with people, there's usually, we start with like building a bridge so that doesn't feel so scary. And I think that's where we begin with all of this, is doing things one step at a time. I think what really overwhelms us is this idea that we have to have it all figured out before we make a change. And so really getting clear about that like next step of what's going to make you happy, what's going to fulfill you before you leave can be really helpful. I will say once you do leave, things really shift energetically, because if you're holding on to that negative energy and you're feeling that pit in your stomach and go to work every day and you're miserable, right? Nothing good is really going to come of that till you leave. But if you can energetically kind of cut yourself off before you leave. So what that means is you're still going to work every day so you can pay your bills, but you're not caught up in the drama. You're not caught up in the politics. It's not depleting you. It's not draining you, because you're focused on where you're going. And so getting that vision of, you know, what do you really want, right? How do you want your life to look? What's important to you? What are your values now? And getting your vision in place before you make a shift, it can really help you start getting that clarity around and courage about what's next. So that's where we start. And even before that, backing up, the most important thing here is not even what you want, but who you want to be. So who do you want to be going forward, right? Because if you're living a life that's not aligned with your truth and you're doing stuff every day that doesn't light you up, I mean, you're not going to be able to fully live a life that's fulfilling, because you're blocking yourself right away by staying there. And so getting clear about, you know, gosh, how do I want to be spending my time? How do I want my days to look? And letting yourself just have that dream and vision. Sometimes we don't even let ourselves have that because we don't think it's possible. But that's where it's really important to just give yourself that gift to think about it and dream and vision. And then once that becomes clear, you're like, oh, that's what I want. It really does start to lift. You know, you start to see like, oh, there's a possibility here that I didn't see before. You know, that clarity is really powerful, and it's a catalyst to kind of get you back on that path towards, you know, where you want to really go.
I like
There's
that.
a group-
Mary and I
yeah.
gotta go now.
We're going to go do our vision boards.
Yes, you do need to do vision boards. You
Well,
really do.
Yeah, no.
You gotta get in a good zone before you do them, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Well, and listen, I really, I went freelance back in 2005, and it was the scariest thing I ever did.
That's tough.
And then, for the acting stuff, and then I ended up fulfilling my teaching degree, and then I ended up, I coach. Oops.
Hold on, our internet. There we go. We're back.
So I've been freelance since 2005, but I have a husband who's a W-2 employee. So when he did lose his job, it was scary because, he didn't have his W-2. And I think men, not like women, and Sue and I talked about this off air, I think men define themselves by their job. Men define themselves by the type of work they're doing, the adoration they get from the job, the money that's in the bank. And for myself, maybe because I am freelance, if I'm not lit up, like you said, working, then I feel like I'm not doing something to society. I feel like I'm sort of not my best self.
And you want to be valued too.
I want to be valued too, but I feel for men, they can get validation by the money for a long time. And then I think the older they get, I have a lot of friends that are turning 50 male who are like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this job forever. And I don't care that my 401k is fantastic. And I don't care that I've got property, like every single day my soul dies a little bit more. And so, I think for the men in our life, as women, we also have a responsibility to show them a different way, especially if we're living with these men, because I think it gets difficult if they're not living
their true self.
And it's not good for your kids to see either.
Right. It's good. It's time for a change in all of that. A climate change.
Yeah.
But I love that you're empowering women and working with that entrepreneurial spirit, because there is really a great energy in that until you do it. I mean, sort of like what you sell yourself. I mean, I don't know, all the stuff that you do is just, I think of you all the time because you have 2 kids and you're just every single day. She's just amazing. So
but I think sometimes it's hard to be pushing yourself, and I want every woman, man, child, alien, whoever, a person, giraffe. I want everyone to really be living in their truth. But I think the sort of perils of life, you can't always do that. And so I think,
but you can though, like if you take what Kimberly just said,
right?
Even if you are punching the clock, but if you know that you're on the path to creating your own self and to owning it, I think that's a good feeling. I mean, if you can just start there, right? I mean, I think that was a really good example. I understand, like, just don't quit your job, even though it's not fulfilling you or on your road, on your passion road, but you can still release that negative energy and open it up to feel and welcome in new stuff. So I think that.
Well, but I have a question for Kimberly. So, and you shared this, so I think it's okay to share it again. Your first husband committed suicide. So for you, and this might be a hard question, do you feel that you would have been able to move forward in the life that you have today if something that monumental did not happen?
That's a really good question, because I was in the corporate world at the time, and I had a chain of events that happened that started with him passing, and then my dad, and then my daughter almost died, and she went to anaphylactic shock, and we thought she might. And so for me, it was this cascading event, but I still went back to work because I felt like, I've got to be a good girl and do my job and keep it going. And then I finally had a moment where I was in the boardroom and I heard a voice inside that told me to leave, and I did. And I talked about how.
Yeah, in the beginning of our book.
Oh, good. Okay. In the boardroom, like you left the boardroom?
I left the boardroom. I was sitting next to the president. And I've finally had the seat at the table that I had worked my whole career for. And I got this tunnel vision. Yeah. And I heard a voice inside that said, "Get out." I thought I was crazy. I looked around the room again, and no one else heard it but me. And then I heard it one more time, and I literally got out of my seat and left. And I left my career that day without a plan at all. And it was clearly, it I wasn't a very spiritual person, but I had asked God for a sign when I was in the hospital with my daughter, and I said, I'll do anything you want. And I felt like that was my sign. And I told my boss I was leaving to help women. My work was no longer fulfilling. It just kind of came out of my mouth. And on this, and quite honestly, I don't know if I would have had the courage to leave if I hadn't gone through all this. Because for me, you know, at the time, I wasn't really, before my husband passed, I wasn't really awake. Everything was fine.
Yep.
You know, it wasn't bottomed out. It was tolerable. It wasn't until I got my wake-up call that I looked back on my life and realized how lost I was and how disconnected I was from myself. So sometimes I don't think that people have the courage to leave until they get the wake-up call. But what you need to do is really pay attention to those signs. You know, do you feel like that pit in your stomach when you're at work? Do you feel, you know, like, ugh, I just dread being here? You're not supposed to feel that way. And if you give yourself permission to start to pay attention to that and start to like look inside and see, geez, you know, what does make me feel fulfilled? What do I wish I was doing now instead of this? And like, just give yourself even the opportunity to go there. So often we don't. And I think you're right. Men get so wrapped up in their identity and their role as a breadwinner that they don't even give themselves the permission. And quite honestly, that was something my husband had struggled with. And I know that was part of the whole, downward spiral for him. And that's why I'm also so compelled to help people find their calling and find why you're here. And for me, I spent 22 years doing market research, helping big brands figure out why they exist. And, you know, now I do it for women, but I always wanted to be a psychologist. That's what I wanted to do. But I was like, oh, my mom was like, you know, you got to make money. Like, you've got to go to school and make money. And, life was like a get through. It wasn't about being fulfilled and all of that. But I think we have an opportunity to really shift that with our kids and with our spouses and with ourselves, because you know what? Life is meant to be wonderful and meaningful. It's not meant to be a get through.
Well, we're rounding off the end of our show here.
Wow, I could talk to her for
I
days.
know. We both
So you're like, yeah, okay. And then back in, 2007, no.
So Kimberly, tell us a little bit about how people can get in touch with you, and also, your website and all that.
That's great. So my website is KimberlyNapier.com. And if you go to my website, if you do want to reach out with me, you can book a free consult with me, as well as there's a link on there. If you do want to get a copy of my new book, you can get a free download of my ebook, Know What You Want Next.
Nice.
And that's in my reading. It is.
Yes.
That's going to be in our favorite books. We'll have like the Mary and Sue, book club. We will.
Okay.
All right. Sounds great.
Is one of our new members. So the last group of people that just joined. I think with 6 other people yesterday. So,
yeah. We're doing great. You also do retreats, right? Do you have a retreat coming up as well?
We have a retreat in Costa Rica in May 5th to the 9th. It's gorgeous location on the coast, and we have a really amazing time planned. It's myself and also a partner, a medium that I work with, Catherine Glass, and it's going to be an all-inclusive retreat on the beach. We're also going to have a shaman. It's going to be very, it's going to be a lot of woo and fun and wine too.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I was checking it out. It looks really, really nice.
So we'll include that in all of our promotion. And I think truly what you're doing, I say this about a lot of things. I think the people who teach are doing God's work. I think now you're doing, I'll say, goddess work, because so many women need to be cultivated and in a lot of ways, and this might sound cheesy, mothered. And so I think you're doing some really good mothering of women who need to feel that, and men too, feel that peace that they don't have.
Well, yeah, it's so different now. I mean, once you get out of school, or if you don't even go there and you have a career, we're living so much longer now. We can have 2 or 3 careers in our lives.
Exactly.
And I loved when I owned my own company. I mean, to me, that there was ups and downs and pitfalls and hurdles and all those things, but I got over them, you know, and I taught my kids perseverance, and it just hung in there and just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And I didn't look at like failure as like, that's it, it's done. I looked at it as a challenge. Like, all right, this didn't work. What else can, you know? So it's important to learn those skills and not to be afraid.
Well, and like I always say, my favorite part of being self-employed is going, hi, I'd like to take a sick day today. Oh, you would? Yeah, okay. You could take a sick day.
I haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Well, I do it in my bathroom. You're sick. Kimberly, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.